about recording. All right. So, once again, I want to introduce you all to Shane Sale, and he is going to talk to us today about medical intuition and DNA healing. And basically, you all, here's the big thing. And because there's a lot of us in this space right here, there's 33 of us right now. If you have a question, I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat, okay? And then I will help Shane get through all of that. Now, if you cannot put it in the chat because whatever platform you're using is not going to make that easy, or if you are just calling in and there's no way for you to do that, you can raise your hand by clicking down on the reactions, which should be at the bottom of your screen if you're on your computer. If you're on your phone, I have no idea. Good luck. And we will try to make sure we get to all of you. But putting it in the chat helps me keep it organized and helps make sure that we get all of your questions answered. So that being said, I think first Shane is going to tell us a little bit about who he is and what he does.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Harry. And I appreciate everybody being on here today. And I have no idea.
Perfect.
Just kidding. So my name is Shane Sale. I am a medical intuitive, a DNA practitioner, a DNA healer. I'm also a massage therapist by training. That's primarily my background for the last 23 years. I'll share with you a little bit how I kind of fell into this. And I literally consider myself a skeptical intuitive, meaning that every leg in my journey of what I've experienced, I've literally had the universe drag me through and really make it obvious for me. And then I'm like, okay, I got it. So that's been my kind of my paramount growing up. And my background as I have no idea what a medical intuitive was. I had no idea what a chiropractor was. I had no idea what alternative medicine doctor was growing up. This was all very new to me. So I literally laugh when I say the universe dragged me through all of this. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that as well on the call here today. And I like to say I'm kind of stubborn in my own way, but now that's a lot less because I just kind of give in. So early on, I graduated from high school and then went into the military shortly thereafter. So I have a military background. I served 6 years active duty in the United States Navy. And I bring that up only because of my naivety growing up. And then what the military taught me was a lot about structure, a lot about professionalism, those things we hear about from military folks of how we learn and how we grow up. That was very much me. Naive in the sense of just like growing up as a 19-year-old kid in Casper, Wyoming, right? So just very naive to the world. So the military taught me that. But one more thing the military taught me that I look back now and I really appreciate was the fact that we're all the same. I remember one day I was walking down outside of the base. There was a town, and I'm walking down the cobbled pathway, and I'm looking, and I happen to look up, and I see this construction worker. He's an Asian gentleman working on his house, and I just paused, and I watched him work for literally 15, 20 minutes. And I just sat there, and it was very much what I would say now. I was very much present with what was going on, and I just observed him watching, and it was such a beautiful thing to watch him work. And it just seems crazy, but I sat there and I remember that to this day. So part of what the military taught me is really about we're all the same. I got out of the service, and then I was wobbling between re-enlisting and making it a career, but things happened, and I'm so glad I didn't stay in. I got out of the service and went to work in corporate America, working for a credit card bank. So just out of curiosity, for those of you way back in the 1995 range, this was before the mail started becoming very heavy with those visa applications. Did you know that those things are tracked? And there's a person that tracks all those cards that go out. That was my job in the military or in the corporate America. So I worked for a credit card bank tracking every step of the way. Sounds really exciting, doesn't it? I see nobody laughing. I see nobody saying yes. Well, nor did I, to be honest with you. However, I made some really good money. I was paid well. I had a suit and tie, which is everything I always wanted to do in my life. I had a girlfriend, maybe two. Had a truck. I had my own apartment. I thought I made it, right? Where I'm going with this story is that there was a time I was about 2 years into working for the credit card bank, advancing the rank and just doing real well. Things were going awesome. I had this pit in my stomach, and I cannot describe it other than a pit. It seemed empty. There was a void there, and I kept feeling like there was more to do, but I had no idea what that was. Can you relate to that? In you guys in your journey? So now you have a choice. Yeah, right. Yeah. There's a choice that you can make. You can either choose to kind of explore what that is, or you can say, things are great and I'll move on. Trick question, which is the better way to go? Well, luckily, I chose to explore what that feeling was. And I made a list on my hand on each side, and comparing what I was doing and what I wanted to do were completely night and day different. So what that led me to believe was is that what I was doing was not helping people. And what was on this hand was things like doctor, an actual MD, chiropractor, sports trainer, yada, yada, yada. Look at this hand. I'm looking at this hand. I'm like going, they do not match. What the aha moment was for me, and this was the universe's way of me being stubborn again. The universe said, well, hey, this is what we want you to do. And then that was why I was so unhappy, was I wasn't following what I was meant to do, and that was to be of help to others. So anything that I do today, and I share this with my clients, we have a lot of ways to be able to work with what we want to do with our passions and our excitement and our missions in life. But it's all about who you are and following that. And when you don't, it becomes a bit rocky. So back to the piece, I made the list. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, this is what's going on. Now, here's the craziest thing. When I talked about the universe having really obvious signs, and I'm sure y'all are going, yep, I remember those obvious signs. I literally started hearing every step of the way on the TV. And this time there was social media wasn't around back then, but if it were, I'd see it all the time on Facebook feed, I'm sure. But I kept seeing become a sports massage therapist, a UCMT, make a career out of becoming a sports massage therapist on the radio, on the TV. And it got to the point where I was like, oh my God, well, please stop. That went on for about 2 or 3 months. I finally gave in. I said, okay, enough. Come to find out, the massage school I ended up attending back in 1997 was literally, I'd say, a half a mile from my house. So the universe knows where I want to share that sign because of just the hints of the idea of in our life, pay attention to those signs. Luckily, I did. I ended up enrolling in a massage school. I had no idea what it was. In fact, the military taught me that massage wasn't what I thought it was. And a wink, wink, I'm gonna, right, exactly. Please laugh with me on that one. I laugh to this day still. But I ended up going through massage school. And the last piece I want to say about going through the massage school and being stubborn is literally, again, my feet were dug into the ground about being stubborn to this whole idea of energetic work and things I can't see, touch, or feel, right? Every teacher I had, every class I had, I literally was like, oh man, why am I paying money for this stupid class? That literally was the thoughts going through my head. And here I am today, 23 years later, being a medical intuitive, being a psychic, being a medium. All of my intuitive abilities have opened up. I have no idea what happened other than following the signs. So I won't bore you with all the details in between, but I will just say that was very pivotal. Going through massage school, it really planted seeds into my system that allowed me to understand there was more to the world than just what we see, hear, or feel. And then over the last 23 years, I've been very fortunate to have many mentors and experiences that have really helped cultivate those skills within me. And now today in my practice, and this is about, well, where I'm in my space now is about 3 years now. Um, and I'm so grateful because now I am completely comfortable. And I love Awkwardly Zen's name, by the way, because I certainly would say I'm very comfortable with my Awkwardly Zen type feeling. Like I really am. I'm totally comfortable with who I am and all of what I offer. Thanks, Kindara. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate that. But it took me a long time to get here. So now in my practice as a massage therapist, as a medical massage therapist, as a medical intuitive, as a psychic, as a medium, it all comes to play and it's all part of who I am and what I offer my clients. So it's not separate. It's all inclusive. How's that for an intro? Is that way too long? Okay. So there's my quick intro. What else can I share with you on that, Ari?
Why don't you just tell us a little bit about like what does it mean to you to be a medical intuitive? Like
ah,
what do people come to you for? Kind of an overview of that.
Yeah. Okay. So great. Let me kind of start off with a couple of clarifications here. So as a medical intuitive, oftentimes when I teach other people or even in my classes I attended, the one question comes up a lot is well, do I need to be a doctor or are you a doctor? You know, or what's your qualifications? You say medical. What does that mean? And here's the irony. The irony is that you don't have to be a medical doctor or a practitioner because here's the deal. Is it Shane that's doing the work? And everybody on the call should be saying no. Trick question, right? Who's doing the work? Source, universe, God, whomever you choose to believe in, right? So the first thing I want to say is that as a medical intuitive, I am really just an observer. I am a witness. I like to kind of consider myself an investigator slash witness and observer. So literally how it works is my intuitive abilities are wide open, and then I connect, and I always get the person's permission to work with. So, for example, area, if I were to work with you, I would say, Area, do I have your permission to work with you doing a healing today? And you would say yes. The key thing is, it was taught to me that the verbal consent is really important. I don't know why, but it makes sense to me. If the person's nonverbal or if they're in a coma or something, there's a way to get permission, and that's by asking the soul, going and checking with the soul to see if the soul's okay with you working. So you can get validation with someone who doesn't speak, but the verbal permission is really essential. So once I get the verbal permission, I go through a short saying that allows me to connect to source, and it brings in the energy, and then I become a channel. And I enter in through the top part of the body, which is the crown chakra, and then I go either into the system or wherever they take me. So their source is going to guide me where they want me to go. And when I talk about medical intuitive, kind of identifying the source of what's going on, you might be coming in for like my eye hurts. They may never look at your eye. They may look at something completely different. And some of my clients get mad. They're like, well, you want to look at my eye? I'm like, I'm sorry, right? I can say, hey, let's look at your eye, but they may not go there. So really, sources kind of going where it's meant to go. And my job as a medical intuitive is to literally follow that. So I'm an observer. I witness what's going on. Details are really, really important. So one of the things as I've become more and more skilled, and I want to say skilled in the sense that developing your own intuition, which all of you are working on all of the time. So I'm constantly evolving as well. But I want to stress the details. So when I go into the system, I'm literally looking at things and going, okay, what am I seeing? I'm asking questions in my head. So if I'm going in, I'm like, okay, cool. I go into the crown chakra, and let's say someone's going on, I see a heart. Okay, what's going on with the heart? Cool. They'll take me to the heart. They'll show me the heart, and I literally the good thing is my background, which I'm sorry I didn't mention before. I was a teacher in massage school for 13 of my 23 years. So I taught all subjects, including anatomy and pathology and physiology. So I have an extensive background and knowledge of just the fundamentals of anatomy. But again, that's not required. Source works with what you are gifted with. Okay, I want to emphasize that. But so when I go in, I see the heart. I know what the heart looks like. So the heart shows up in my head. It's big and it blows up, and I see it spinning around. And I'm saying, okay, well, what's the size of the heart? Is the heart normal? I wait for an glance, and they'll show me the heart looks like it's small. Okay, so just out of general curiosity, if the heart is small, what might that mean to the blood vessels? That might mean that there's hypertension going on or something. It's not able to pump. Something's going on with the heart. So, or if it's too large, and there's more times that's the case where I see it's too large than too small. So I see the size, and then I observe. So they show me how it is now, and then I watch them work on it. So sometimes, and this is where it gets crazy. I got to say, how many of you can agree? This is by waving your hands or commenting, if you will. How many of you agree that when you're working in an intuitive world, or when you're in that space, it is very non-linear and it is quite hysterically funny? Anybody else besides Ari? Okay, I got another one. Good. I can't see everybody on the screen, but is there people agreeing? Because I got to tell you, your intuition is key to the creativity and the inspiration, and what's that other word? Imagination. Your imagination is your intuition. So I really want to stress that. And that's where, if you lock in and go, I'm serious about what I'm seeing, get my point? Hopefully, yeah. So going back to the heart. So when I see the heart, what'll happen oftentimes is there's characters that come in to work on the heart. And the one that shows up a lot for me is a little a yellow dude with the one eyeball with the hat. Um, I forget what the names are. I see them in my head. Despicable Me characters, the
Minion.
minions. The minions show up, right? So the minions will show up more times than not, and they'll start working. And there's the construction head or the hats, and their source's way of telling me that they're working on that part. So they go into construction mode, they repair the heart. I watch them repair the heart, either whatever they're doing. Sometimes it's with light, sometimes it's with actual mechanical hammer, whatever it might be, whatever shows up. I just watch that and I watch it to completion. So I want to be clear when I say details. I can't stress enough. It's like I'm literally watching it heal till they tell me it's done. Does that make sense? That's really important. Despite what your background or training is, if you're like looking at this, like I'm literally watching it to completion. And then being the teacher within me, what I understand from source is they'll give me a green check mark. Say, okay, boom, heart's done, and they'll move on. So that's an example. So I go in, I watch it to completion, and then when I'm complete with the session or whatever they're working on healing, they'll back me out oftentimes, and they always leave the system whole, healthy, balanced, and complete when I leave. So what does that mean? Well, not only does it mean the physical body, but also the energetic body and the chakras. So so they'll back me out, and I'll look at the chakras, I'll see the colors, I'll see if there's anything that needs to be cleared there, and those go through a clearing of the energy field as well as the chakras. And so then once that happens, they'll tell me that's complete. And then at that time, I kind of pause. I do something like this where I'm unzip myself to help me bring out of the body. And then my soul comes back into my system and the session's complete. Ooh, did I miss anything there? All right, so there's a quick example of kind of how it works. Yep.
Awesome. We do have a couple questions. Are you ready for those?
I thought you might have questions already. Okay, fire away.
All right. So Cindy wanted to know what the difference is between what you do and Reiki, like a Reiki session.
Ah, Cindy, that is an amazing, fabulous question. Thank you for asking that question. Okay,
No problem.
so a medical intuitive versus a Reiki practitioner. So Reiki, I'm a level 2 practitioner. I'm not a master by any means, but I have Reiki training, also healing touch training. Those are techniques to help with the energetic field of the body. So those are techniques that help with healing. That you can channel through your system and work with people to balance their field out, correct? Okay, the difference between medical intuitive is that in your well, let me answer that in two ways. One is that source is doing the work and you're just observing. So you're taking all the details in. Now, if you happen to have Reiki training, now again, universe, your source is going to work with you to help that body heal. So you may get the inclination that if I'm working with someone here and I'm seeing on my screen, or if I'm working with them, I might take my hands and kind of go over their field and start clearing it out that way. So that's a way of kind of using my healing touch training or Reiki training. So that's a technique you can bring in to assist the healing. But I do want you to know the difference is that source is doing the healing and you're observing and watching.
Got it.
The
Thank
techniques
you.
have can help. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Love it. Yes, definitely.
Great. Good question. You said you have another one, Ari?
I do. I've got a couple more. So one, Paul actually wants to know what the difference is from shamanism.
Oof.
I know.
Wow. Okay. So can we have Paul kind of chime in here real quick?
Sure.
Okay. Paul, you able to come in?
What'd you say?
Paul, are you there?
Yeah, man.
Okay, would you mind clarifying your question? I understand what you're asking, but I just want to hear from you to see what you're asking me in more detail here.
Oh, I was just wondering the difference between that and Reiki, and then it sounded a bit like shamanism. So
yeah, okay, great. So shamanism is healing techniques that the Native Americans have developed, and again, forgive me for not knowing all the depths, but it's again another technique or another system within their processes that source works through them in on technique wise. I don't have a lot of extensive background in shamanism, but I'm going to suggest that some of the techniques they use to help heal are certainly from source guided, but that can be pulled into a session as well if that's your background. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good question. Thanks.
And then Monica wanted to know if you were a medium or an intuitive first, and when did you realize you were a medical medium?
Oh dear goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Where do I start? Okay, so again, whew, ever since I was younger, I don't have that story of like I could see dead people everywhere when I was a kid. That's not my experience at all. However, looking back at my journey, I can certainly know where I was super sensitive to energies that I didn't know that were there. So that's what I could say about that. So I would say early on as a kid, I really was open to the idea of the other side. I just didn't know what it was. I really had no context. I didn't grow up in a place where that was, commonplace. So that was where I started out from. But then going further, I'll tell you a story. I was working at a chiropractor's office as a massage therapist, and this client had come in for like they're doing 10-minute neck and shoulder massage for the car accident, etc. And I'm working on her. I'm sitting on my table and I'm working on her neck, and all of a sudden I get this person that's coming in on my right side, visible as all day, and I'm like, okay, look, this guy is bothering me like crazy. He's about 6'2", and he's a looks like he's kind of a Caucasian, a little darker skin. He's got black hair and he's got glasses. My client started crying on the table. She says, that was my son I lost 6 months ago. So I want to say, I don't know when it started. I can just say that it's always been there. And then when clients or people that are in my presence, that well, now it's more obvious. Thank you. They're telling me, okay, shush. It's a lot more obvious now. But what I would say is that's kind of how it started. And then those experiences kept happening. And then so I'm again, slow and very like stubborn, right? I'm like, okay, I finally give in. The psychic part, they kind of work hand in hand. And then they worked developing together. And I just spent consciously more time, through healing touch training, opening up my own energy systems over the years, where it just kind of all of a sudden all came together. And I realized that it was it's all of who I am. Numerologically speaking, I'm what they call a 33 and three. So I have 2 3s in my numbers. And according to Dan Millman's book I have, 3s are very sensitive. So I'm super sensitive anyway, which makes a lot more sense now when I look back. But so I just embraced it and continued to kind of flourish and cultivate it and allow it to grow. And I never poo-pooed it. I just kind of like, But mind you, I'm also very like military. If I'm walking down the street, I work for a workman's comp doctor who has no idea I'm a medical intuitive or who has no idea I'm a medium. I mean, if he knew that, he'd be like, what? So I can present myself in a way that's very much like they wouldn't guess that, right? Does that answer your question? Monica, is one of the questions?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
I love the question. That's awesome.
All right. Robin has a question. Robin, do you want to pop on and ask your question?
Sure, I can do that.
Hi.
So my
Hello,
question,
Robin. You look comfortable.
yeah, I've been on my back recovering from back spasms for 4 weeks. So I have Magic, my dragon, with me here. So I would say it's pretty comfortable, all things being equal.
What is your
Limited
question?
options, but they're comfortable. So my question is, you described that you were in massage school and you were like, this is stupid. What am I doing here? And I can really relate that. I feel like the universe is giving me these signals, and then part of my mind is like, this isn't going anywhere. This is foolish. Your dad would say that doesn't make any sense or whatever. And I'm wondering if you ever managed to overcome those thoughts and feelings, and if so, how? And are you still really stubborn, or have you kind of improved in that area?
I love you. This is a great group, Harry. I love these questions. Very, very good question. So let me just say this. Again, I'm a skeptical intuitive. So absolutely, I still have that idea in my mind about like, but what I want to, which you're actually kind of feeding into here a little bit too, is our belief systems on how we're brought up and what we're thought to think and be. that has a lot to play in your development. And so for me, it was really clearing out and understanding all of those limiting beliefs. So working through those belief systems, which kind of feeds into the DNA part of what I do, is to help clear those out of the systems. So throughout the time, working on myself to help realize what was limiting and then moving forward. The biggest one I can say is this: self-doubt. Self-doubt for me is still, I think I was born with self-doubt. I really do. I think it's like part of my skin. So Aries raising her hand, I see that. So self-doubt is very much there. And so there was a long time where I literally would like, I don't know about this. This is crazy. I didn't have external influences. I had more internal influences, my own mind, my own system. Like, how dare I can't, the one that really like pushed me to the limit was having my own office and going, okay, now what do I do? You want me to become a psychic? What are you, freaking nuts? Like, you want me to advertise that to the world? That self-doubt was very much there. So I want to say it still exists, but here's the cool thing. When I'm working with clients and patients, I let them know, don't give in or be aware of that self-doubt or that limiting piece, that sabotage talk about the ego. The ego is there to help you move through it, but it can also deter you. So I'm always encouraging my clients and patients to recognize that, to hear it, and it's like a skill. So it constantly kind of is in the back of my head, but I pay it no attention anymore. So it doesn't flare up or give me any concern. Every now and then it does, but I'm like, oh, knock it off. What are you doing? Or another way I would phrase is that I check in. I'm like, do I need to be really serious about this? Is this really something that needs my attention, or is this just my mind going crazy? 99% of the time, guess what it is? My mind going crazy, right? There's that 1% where it's like there's some validity to what's going on. So I would say, to answer your question very concisely, it's still there. I'm always aware of it, but I pay it no attention. And now when I say I'm very comfortable and confident in who and what I am. Like, I know who I am. Whereas before, there was always that, I kind of know who I am. You maybe a little bit, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, I know I am, right? That kind of that skepticism, but that's not the case anymore. And your energetic field actually presents that too. So when you show up to the world, people pick up on that. They can really detect what's going on. So I don't see in my world, I don't see that anymore. I don't see it reflected back to me anymore. Does that make sense? Did I answer all your questions? So this is a teacher in me. I can talk forever about anything. Whoops.
We like
Okay.
it. That's why we asked you here.
Yeah.
All right. So here in just a second, Matthew has a question about PTSD, and so I'm going to let him ask that on his own. Before we go into that, though, could you tell us what offer you have for Awkwardly Zen members, because you are being so generous with that?
Yeah, okay. So for Awkwardly Zen folks that are being part of this conversation today or being part of this group, normally if you book a session with me, if you go on the website, you'll see my services. A first-time medical intuitive session is $10 off. I'm offering an additional $5 for your first session with me. You'll need to contact me directly though, so you won't see that on the system, but you can certainly, so it'll be $15 off your first time coming in.
Awesome. And they can contact you through the website, right?
Correct. Yep. Or I think my phone number is there too on the website as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I put his website on the chat, but it's www.innerlightshines.com for those of you who are not seeing the chat. All right, so Matthew, if you want to unmute.
I see Tom I see a thing from Tom. I meant to ask this earlier. The cool thing is, and going back to Maka's question about developing your skills. So Tom is asking, do I work remotely? Yes. In fact, I am so grateful for many of my clients. Some of them are here today, that during the pandemic time in May and early May and into April, when my office was physically closed, a lot of my income came from the psychic, medium, and medical intuitive work via remote. So I do have clients in North Carolina. I've got some clients in Florida, some in Utah, Washington State. So I've got them throughout the United States that work with me. So I do work virtually.
Yeah, and let me just say, and I want to tap into this. So if you have had an experience with a session with Shane and you're going to be willing to share, would you please shoot me a message and let me know, and I'll share about mine here. Mine was over the phone and it was awesome. So I would say that digital or virtual works very well. All right, so Matthew has a question and then Cindy has a question as well.
Yeah,
Matthew?
Shane. It's nice to meet you. My name is Matthew. My your story is very interesting. It resonates. My grandfather was in the Navy.
Oh,
He worked in he worked down in the he worked in a submarine, Morse coding.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, he's got a lot of stories to tell and things like that, and how sometimes there were times where even some of the other guys on the team would sabotage him because he gained the favor of somebody at the top. And so I don't know all the details of your service or anything like that, but I just wonder, uh, what what can you do anything for somebody who's struggling with PTSD? I mean, what would be the first recommendation that you would have for somebody struggling with
Okay,
PTSD?
great. Good question. Okay, so yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Absolutely, we can work with PTSD. And that is a traumatic experience where the system is still holding on. And so when we have someone with like PTSD, I look at oftentimes like the traumatic event. So let me back up. The beautiful part about this work I do, there is no, we don't need to rehash the story unless the patient or client is willing, they want to talk about it. That might be how they want to let it go. So I want to be clear, I'm not a therapist. I'm not like a counselor, but many of my clients I've worked with, I'm thinking of two veterans that have both suffered from PTSD who I've worked with. They tell me, they're like, this is like therapy, but way better. That's their words. I want to be very clear. But because, again, as a medical intuitive, we're working with the entire system. We're looking at not only the mental or the psychosis side of things, but the belief systems, the energetic field of the body, the emotional field, the mental field, the physical body itself, where the emotions or the trauma is stored. And that's a great, good question. So how do we help with that? We help with that with going in. I didn't lead into this too much yet, but the DNA part of the work I look at and some of the belief systems are holding on to, like grief, sadness, depression. We can clear that at the genetic level, and then we can look at other parts too to help clear the field, the emotions stored to that. And many of my clients that I've worked with, the two I'm thinking of, by working with them, it helps them clear that out of their field without having to verbalize that. They feel lighter, they feel more comfortable in their own skin, and they start to mend. And then we can look at other parts of like what's going on, like maybe smaller belief systems that tie into that PTSD system. If it's genetic or if they're born with that, we can clear that out of the genetic code going back so many generations. I'll explain that here more in a second. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It was very helpful, and I plan on connecting with you through your website.
Yeah, so let me just ask you, so being that you asked about PTSD, what are some of the things I've helped with? A lot of times folks will come in, I'm the last person they're going to see. That's true, I think, as a massage therapist. Those of you that maybe know massage therapists, like we're the last ones people like doctors refer to, et cetera. Well, I have no idea. But even as a medical intuitive, that's even more rare. But when they come in and see me, oftentimes like they're at their last resort. They have no idea. Doctors are telling them, I have no idea what's going on with me. Can you help? And yes, I can help because it's not me, it's not Shane, it's source. So what happens oftentimes is that they come to me as last resort with some pretty really crazy conditions. There's one case I belong to the farmers market here on Pearl Street in Denver. And every summer, or actually the summer and early fall, we're doing events, not this year because of COVID, but previous years. One gal had come from North Carolina. She'd come in and she'd visit with me and got my card. And then I got from her about 2 months later. She has had a condition, it's like H1N1, it's like a lymphoma, like a kind of cancerous, but it's really rare. It's like 1% of 1% of people have this. And I'm like going, I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on here, but I gathered her information. I asked her to send over what the doctors were doing, her lab results. So kind of how this integrates with mainstream medicine is I asked my patients for information and give me if they have any recent blood draws or whatever it might be, give me the data that they're, if you don't mind sharing with me, great. So shared the information with me. We looked at the information, the blood work that was coming through. We went in and did a session and really helped. Source went in and looked at the blood, looked at the lab results, and kind of balanced those pieces out. And I worked with her for about 2 or 3 times, and then I didn't hear from her, but she sent me these beautiful candles, which I actually do have in my office right here now. And she says, that was so amazing and so helpful. I feel so much better. Well, about 2 months later, so she's healthy, she's fine. She recovered from a relapse of what was going on. I'm all excited, she's all excited. But then about 2 months later, her goes in for her lab results again and gets checked out. The lab results have actually kind of went down or they declined. And we're like, oh man, what's going on? So my human self is going like, what's going on, right? So we started working with her again. And we helped her out. We helped to manage her system to where her strength, her immune system, her body is able to prepare and then go in. And she had surgery over Christmas. She had what we call stem cell replacement. So all of the stem cells were taken out of her body and then, as I understand it, were made new and then put back in her system. So, but she needed to be strong for that. And so we helped her do that as well. And she sent me a recent testimonial about how much that really helped. So that's an example of how I may not know what's going on like when I see it, but again, it's not me, Shane, doing the work. So I take the data from what my clients or patients tell me, what the information is coming from the doctors if needed. I put it together. And then in some cases, we can look at details and say, okay, what about the A1C1 levels for diabetes? Okay, let's look at that. We can go in and we can adjust the levels there. How's the hormone levels? I see a lot of folks with thyroid conditions. Hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. So those can kind of come in too. So it depends on where they're coming in physically wise, what I can help with. How's that, Matthew?
That's a lot to chew on. And,
I know, right? But in essence, I want to stress the point. Yeah, I want to stress the point that as a medical intuitive, I'm not a doctor, but I'm learning as I go, and I take what data is available, and then source really directs what's going on after that, and then we look at what source is doing.
With what you just said, Shane, I'm going to skip ahead to Joseph's question and then we'll come back to Ethan and Cindy's. But Joseph was talking about like if there's somebody who has a current medical treatment and they're on a medication for something and then you are working with them, how do you deal with that with their numbers changing? Is that when you recommend they go to a doctor or how do you deal with that?
Oh, I love that question. Okay, so I think in the bio or the piece of the description of today's talk is about how does it integrate with mainstream medicine? So if you're in my office and you're working with me and having the work done, it is very common that you are being healed and the medication dosage that you had received initially upon diagnosis or treatment is now going to be too much for your system. So that's not, so again, I want to be clear, I'm not a doctor, I don't make those decisions. If that comes up in our session, the psychic part or the intuitive part comes in and says, hey, look, what I would like you to do, Ari, if you don't mind, is have you had your blood work done again or talk with your doctor about your medication? Just run it by him and tell him what you're describing, and maybe he can wean you off that a little bit or start decreasing it. Honestly, more times than not, my clients do it on their own. I tell them not to. But more times than not,
Yes, let me be very clear on Awkwardly Zen's part. He is not telling you to do that.
No. For the recording, no. Not a doctor, but that is a very common experience. So when we start healing, you don't need as much medication. And if you're already sensitive, you probably already can relate to the fact that what the doctor gives you as a doses, you probably are taking less just because as sensitive as you are. And your vibrational frequency is starting to increase. Which let me back up and kind of explain more about one other difference between like when we're working as a medical intuitive, it is really, it's full body, full systemic, your whole system, meaning your physical body, your soul, your energy field. It's all of that I'm working with. When you show up, I'm asking, what does this soul need? So I'm not asking what does this body need, what does this body part need, I'm asking what does this soul need. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, and then Cindy wanted to know a little bit more about the DNA side of things. Like, what does that?
Great segue. Okay, so let me kind of share with you. It's 2014. I went through my initial training in medical intuition, and kind of backstory there. Going through massage school, and once I started realizing there was intuitive work and actually, or energetic work, and it actually worked, and I bought into it, I started reading all kinds of crazy books, like Carolyn Mace's book on medical intuition, Anatomy of the Spirit. All of, or not medical intuition, but Anatomy of the Spirit, and her work, she was very much influential in my learning once I started realizing it was actually a possibility. So I was always fascinated by medical intuition. And then I had an opportunity to take a course, and I wanted to actually go through Carolyn Mace's work, or there's a school in the West Coast that's like $40,000. I just didn't want to pay the money. I didn't want to commit to that kind of money. But I found a gal here in Loveland, Colorado, that was not far from my home that I could take a weekend course and do my first intro, and it just kind of felt right. So anytime I do a class now, I'm always kind of guided or pulled to do it, and it's usually more like they're dragging me to do it, and I'm like, okay, I give up, I'll do it. And that was the case with her. Went through a program, and that really gave me the tools. So you're asking about Reiki before, or the shamanism. Those are tools to work with within your healing modality that you prefer. And that's what happened with me. So I had more of a construct and a more of a mechanism on how to work as a medical intuitive, which again was helpful for me because I'm that military corporate person, right? I like the structure. So this gave me very much a structure. So once I went through the program as a medical intuitive, I then started working, she introduced the idea of DNA healing. And I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. What is that? So she gave a highlight of what that was in the weekend class, kind of like a pitch for the next class. And I was like, I'm sold. So I signed up and put my deposit down right at the last day of the medical intuitive class. Now, come to find out, this is what's so crazy weird. The instructor, when I did the medical intuitive work with her, she was retired, but came out of retirement to teach 4 people. I was one of those 4 students in the class. I was the deciding factor for her to teach the class. Kind of a backstory, kind of chuckle. So when we did the medical intuitive, or sorry, the DNA class, that was a 4-day intensive class. It was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all day long. So it was like almost 10, 12 hours a day for those 4 days. And when I signed up for it, she says, well, I don't know if we have anybody that signed up. I knew I needed it. That's all I can say is I knew it. So I gave her my money without knowing it would actually happen. So it was like in October, actually, let me see my thing. October 2014, when I went through the medical intuitive class, put my deposit down. And it wasn't until 2018 in October when she had enough people to do the class for the DNA practitioner training. So I attended the 4-day class. Now, to answer your question, what is that? So the DNA part of the class is really a set of tools, as it was described to me, to be able to go in and work while you're doing a medical intuitive session. So it gives you the fundamental tools. Now I'm not only becoming an observer, I'm also now becoming a healer, more of a healer, which I already was with my healing touch and my Reiki background. So those tools we've already had, this gave me a set of tools to work within that construct, to be able to help people in more of a profound way. So the PTSD came up a moment ago, and some other things, conditions that have come up. Well, what I'm going to share with you is, and again, this is my own experience, by a show of hands, how many people, or waves, how many people believe that every condition in your body that's showing up as a pathology is stemming from some form of a belief? I see no hands going up. I see kind of, sort of, maybe. I see lots of no's. Oh, I got to get off the call. I can't take it no more. I'm with you 100%. I know exactly what you're thinking. You're like thinking, Shane, you're absolutely crazy. I know. Let me just share with you. I completely agree with what you're thinking. But let me tell you, We are a spiritual being having a human experience. We are an energetic, powerful being, all creative being that creates our world and all aspects of it, for good, for bad, or for ugly, for our lessons to learn. We are a spiritual being. What does that mean? Well, that means that our thought forms are very creative, and what we think about, we bring about. So literally, I am not kidding, 100% of your world and your pathologies and how you exist are forming from some belief. Dun, dun, dun. There's the drum roll. Again, the skeptical part of me has said, okay, right. But it's so true. So one case comes to mind. So in the DNA practitioner training, what we're trained to do is go in, and one tool of many is to go in and help clear beliefs out of 4 levels. Subconscious level, we're trained to clear them out of the genetic level, which could be like in your ancestral DNA going 14 generations back. You may not be aware of it consciously, but it could be hidden in there from grandma, great-grandma, great-granddad, etc. The 3rd level I work at is the history level, and that is what we look at as if you believe in past lives or anything that's going on and you're bringing into this world, that's those beliefs that are held there that you're bringing forward in this lifetime can be cleared. And the 4th level is the soul level. So anything the soul is able or coming in with that we're able to go and move forward from, we clear it out of that level as well. So again, I want to let you know my medical massage background, my military background, corporate America background is going, what, are you freaking nuts? Yes. My mental mind is absolutely going bananas, right? How do I put this in some kind of context? And I want to stress that this is very much experiential. Through my experience and through work I've done with folks, when we shift the beliefs, they get better. And I don't know how else to describe that other than that. So in the DNA track practitioner training, that was one technique. So learning how to clear those out of those levels. And then the other part that we learned about is genetic pathologies. So let's say alcoholism or depression. I've seen a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression lately, particularly with COVID, but the genetic pieces that are coming through. So as the genetic pieces come through, one technique is to clear it out of the genetic code of the body. So I describe it very much like an umbrella. So if you look at the genetic depression, for example, so say depression runs in your family and it goes back, you can trace it back to mom and grandma, whatever. That would be considered a genetic condition. So we'll start there because it's like an umbrella with little, the symptoms of depression are the notches on the umbrella. So if we clear the depression, the umbrella goes away and the symptoms dissipate. Make sense? So that's another component of the DNA practitioner work that I do when source is asking for it. If someone's talking to me and they say, well, or if they say I'm depressed or I got depression or PTSD or whatever it might be, I'm like, does that run in the family? Because that tells me then we may need to clear it out of that genetic piece. Another part that I don't do a whole lot with, but it does come up from time to time, and that is adjusting hormones. Dun, 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 drum roll again. So what do you mean by adjusting hormones? So a big one is estrogen, not estrogen. Well, estrogen is one, but that's not one I'm thinking of. What's that? Hold on.
Is it progesterone?
Yep, I think so. Let's see. That could be one, yes. That could be one. That's not the one I'm thinking of, but yes, that is one. Sorry. Neurotransmitters. So when folks are depressed, oftentimes they have very low levels of what?
Serotonin.
Serotonin or dopamine, right? A for you. So when someone comes in, a source may guide me to adjust their serotonin or dopamine levels in their body. And this is where, again, if they're on medication, where it could show up, where they may need to kind of watch those doses if they're on those kind of drugs. Again, that's what a doctor would look at. So we go into the system. I've been trained to go in and observe and watch how they how they adjust those levels. And again, I want to say it's very simple, but when I'm observing and watching, they'll show me a test tube, and 5 on the test tube is the normal balance. So if I see 5 across, that means they're balanced. So I'll say, source, what does their dopamine levels look like, or their serotonin levels look like, and they'll show me if they're high or if they're low. Well, if they're high, that can be certain symptomatic problems, and or if they're low, you might, it can balance that out. So I watch them literally raise or lower those levels through the test tubes as they're working. So that's another way in that DNA part of the practitioner training that I've had that allows me to go in and work at that level. So all of that is really a set of tools that helps me when I'm in a medical intuitive session. How about that?
Awesome. Okay, while you were going through all that, there was a couple questions that tie into that, but then I will come back to you, Ethan and Monica. So the first was Brenda wanted to know what the 4th level was. Could you repeat that?
Soul.
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 Okay. And then Matthew wanted to know, can you just edit depression out with this? Like, can it, you have experiences where that is something that was helped? I don't want to say the word cured because we don't cure.
Yeah, you raise a great question, Ari, because again, the skeptical mind of me, I argue with God all the time. I'm like, what is going on, right? Yes, I can give you a case. One of my cases I've worked with, this is one of the military folks. She is a counselor by trade and counsels other folks. And she was in the military and she had some PTSD from it, etc., but was very depressed and just having a rough time. So in working with her and clearing out the depression or whatever we're working with, I don't know exact stats here, but one of them was clearing depression. One of them was clearing, joy in life. Again, this is gonna sound crazy weird, but like when I'm working with someone and I say, well, do you love life? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, why not? Life is great. Or I don't know if Kitty's on the phone, is Kitty still there?
I'm here.
Kitty, can I talk about fun for a second?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, Kitty, thank you for letting me talk about this. So in your case, Kitty, if I recall right, and I had to go back and look at my notes in my memory, because when I'm working with someone, I forget. I don't remember what I do. The details kind of fade me. But I know with Kitty, fun was really important. There was a lack of fun. And I know somewhere in those sessions, it was about just enjoying and having more fun, doing more fun things. Can you talk about that for a second, what that meant to you?
Well, it was interesting. I came across Sean through Kendara's Intro to Metaphysics group in May, just as I was really starting to roll my sleeves up on my spiritual journey. And I came to Sean with issues from Lyme disease and brain injury, and thought I was going to have an energy treatment. I had a medical medium session, and as well as we went to the psychic route, the DNA, kind of the whole schmear over a couple sessions. But one of the first things Shane said, oh, you're all about fun. I mean, like, you're serious fun. Ari has said that. I've had that in several readings, and I've been weaving more fun in my life. And really, that's at the core of who I am. And I think, too, measuring psychic development through the amount of fun or having it delivered in a fun way instead of a way that's a little creepy and spooky and scary. My body is happier, my mind is happier when I'm having fun. And it was interesting that Shane picked up on that. And also, he is a fun guy. And I have to say that after my very first appointment, he was like a lightning rod to my spiritual growth. I just had a lot of really synchronistic psychic experiences within the next 24 hours that I don't know that if you even knew that, Shane, but Shane is a great resource.
I appreciate the testimony, Kitty. But I'm thankful you talked about the fun part, because the emotion of like when we are not in alignment with who we truly are, and if you're in the case like Kitty, where fun is an essential part of yourself, if you dampen that, think of it like your energetic field, like you're literally putting a brick on your body and you're weighing it down. So when I'm in someone's system and I'm looking at like, in the case of Kitty, it's like you're not having fun, or if there's some kind of depressional element to that, it's discovering what their essence is and what source is showing me. So again, in Kitty's case, it was fun. You're not having fun, Kitty. What's going on, right? So however it came about in the session, but helping her lift that brick. Now, again, I want to be very clear. Source is doing the work. Source is guiding this whole process. But if it's not, a Kitty is just as responsible for her own healing, because if she's not willing to do the work, guess what? It doesn't happen, right? You don't heal. It just more or less plants seeds. So Kitty, back to you in the sense of congratulations for, taking that step and having the energy to move into that direction, because that is you. That's you wanting to sincerely move forward. So just as much as it is to source and what I've done with you, it's also up to you and being able to be comfortable in that journey going forward. So kudos to you too for that. But then, so now when you hear her talk and you have, that fun part, and I have to laugh. She sent me an email last night talking about some pinball machine, having all kinds of fun with it. I was laughing. I was like, I don't know if I should reply to this email or not, but it brought so much joy to me because she's in her element. She's in that creative, inspirational, she's getting out of her head. And what is that word again? When you're, what is that word? Creativity, you're in your imagination, right? You're allowing it to flow. And that's when people come in for whatever reason, whatever that pathology is, I see it as energetically heaviness in the field, and we clear that out with the multiple ways of clearing it out. So that's another distinction between, say, maybe a Reiki session or something. That's a tool, whereas this really helps. So a source does the work and they clear at all levels. Good. Thank you, Kitty. I appreciate you letting me talk about that for a second.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to have Ethan ask his question because I think you're going to want clarification there.
Okay, thanks, Ethan.
Yeah, I was just, my question was, well, I have to scroll up to my question here. What are your thoughts about a closed heart and the process of reopening the heart?
Okay, so you're asking about the closed heart and reopening the heart, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. Are you talking about just a general, like a person and choosing to close the heart chakra down and then wanting to open that up again? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So, closing the heart chakra out of fear, not wanting to get hurt again, and then the process of being able to reopen the heart, and what does it take?
Okay,
Just the
great.
process.
Thank you. Thank you. Ethan, I'm getting chills when you're asking that question. So that's a very good question, and they have a lot to say about that. Okay, I can already kind of tell. I'm getting serious. I'm getting my serious energy now. So my fun energy is leaving. I'm getting serious now. Let me be very clear. When it's you as the human being, or through your thought processes, no one makes a decision for you. You make that decision. It's your choice. Whomever I'm speaking with, it's your choice. It's your choice on your experience of shutting that down. Now, I really want you to think about it from an energetic standpoint. So we have our field. Barbara Brendan's work, by the way, if you like a good resource, Barbara Brendan is a NASA scientist who has written 2 books on pretty much, I call it the energetic Bible. So there's 2 books on there. Light Emerging is one of them, 2 phenomenal ones. But back to my point here, she illustrates the chakras and she illustrates the energy field. When someone closes their heart down, again, that's their choice. No one does that for them. No one can make you do anything you don't want to do. So when you choose to close that part of your down, either or part of yourself down, literally, so you start off with the thought process of a trauma or something happens, experience happens where you just feel like, I don't feel safe, I don't feel comfortable, I'm gonna protect myself, right? As a massage therapist, when people come into my office, I look at structure a lot. So structurally speaking, when someone comes in, they're like this. See if I can get a good example of this on the picture. Can you get a picture of that? I'm way over exaggerating, but my chest is collapsed, my heart, I'm protecting my whole anterior side. That's our yin side in traditional Chinese medicine. So I'm very much guarding and protecting. So you mentioned fear. Absolutely. There's a lot of fear there. So I don't know what that fear is initially, but it could be either they were heartbroken. It's oftentimes can indicate a lot of, and I'm really kind of going to severe cases here. They don't feel safe. They don't feel comfortable. They feel in their own skin. They may have been hurt with a heartbroken, a relationship that might have been bad, or they might be abused. Again, not to talk about the negative side of this too much, but basically all that comes around fear. So you become guarded and you protect. And then energetically speaking, your heart chakra, which is right in the center of your chest, it's a wheel of light, as the Sanskrit word defines, but it's emerald green in color. So if that starts to shut down, then you're energetically, you kind of pick up on that with someone. They feel kind of sad, or they don't feel very lively. Whereas someone who walks around like this, like, hey, what's going on? And they feel much more lively, and you kind of get that sense. So energetically starting off with, that's where it starts. It starts in your field energetically first. Over time, if that doesn't get corrected, what could happen if you don't correct that? What could happen then is it can physically show up in the body. So structurally, you start to cave in. So structural, muscle, bone-wise, it starts to collapse. But then tissue-wise, the heart chakra not only governs our unconditional love, but it also governs the actual heart and the lobes of the lungs. So you might start developing circulatory issues. Might start developing some breathing issues, asthma, those. And I'm not saying that's what it is, but that stems from some kind of fear in general. Does that make sense? So that's the negative side of it. So how do we correct that? Or how do we look at that? Or how do I look at that as a medical intuitive might be a better way? Does that make sense?
It makes lots of sense so far.
Okay, so when someone comes into me, and again, in my note, I have this book right here. It's my tablet, so I'm always taking notes when someone comes in. This is the therapist part of my work. So when they come in and start talking to me, I have an intake form. I'm going through and I'm writing down what they already told me about, but then what they're verbalizing to me when they come in. So let's say this person's having a conversation with me, and they're talking about how they and I've had this happen. One gal, I've never felt safe. Like, not that I was abused or grew up in an abusive home, but there was verbal abuse, there was this, there was that, and then growing up, I never felt safe. I never felt comfortable in my environment. I always feel like I'm on edge, and I don't know why. Right. And that may show up in the heart chakra. So what I would do is I would identify that as I'm writing that down. And then we look at the belief. The number one belief that I would tie to that piece in our conversation would be is, I feel safe. No. And you're like, okay, well, that makes sense. Why is it that simple? So when we look at that statement, I feel safe, no, keep in mind when, as I've learned and as I understand, when you're working with the universe is very direct and very literal. So if I say I am not safe, the universe doesn't recognize not. So it says I am safe. Does that make sense? So in the verbiage, when I'm looking at someone and their belief and they're holding the belief of I am not safe, we just transpose that to I am safe, no. Got it? So if they're on my chair and I'm talking with them, or if they're on the phone, I'll ask them, and this is another way that I've kind of found it very helpful. So if so I ask them this question, I'm like, let me just ask this question to you and just take a snapshot on how it feels right now. So if I say to you, I am safe, you say, and they'll give me this response like, I don't know what you're talking about. Or they'll kind of, my hit will be like, yeah, they start thinking, they go into their head about it. And I can see this happen energetically. And I'm like laughing. I'm like, oh my God, it's there. So I look at the I am safe, no. And then I say, okay, look, out of fairness, I just want you to take a snapshot of that and see what it feels like. And then when we're done with the clearing of it, we'll go back and we'll look and see if it changes. Are you on? And they're like, okay, let's try it. So we go through the clearing and we replace I am safe, no, with the most common one that comes up a lot is I am safe, or I am safe now and always, whatever it might be. So we clear it at the levels that I see it cleared at. We clear it, we're done, we go through the whole piece, and I'm sitting in the chair and I ask them, I say, okay, let me bounce this idea off of you. I am safe. They're like, I could see it in their breath. I could see it in their face. I don't know how to describe it, but it feels different. I don't know what happened. That's not, and when I see that happen, and why I do that is not for me as a practitioner, it's for the patient or the client to understand that a shift took place. I know it took place because intuitive, I know what happened, but it's more for you as the patient or client to recognize that a shift took place within inside of you. They're talking, Ari, can you talk to that for a second? Because they keep bringing your name up around that. Are you comfortable talking about that for a second?
Clarify exactly what you want me to talk about. I was writing down a question.
I'm sorry, my bad. So in our session, did I do that snapshot with you and say, hey, how does this feel with a belief? Do you recall? I don't recall that, but they're talking about.
I don't, to be completely honest, like I feel like I was channeling during my session with you as well, so I don't remember everything. But I almost feel like our guides were working
The
together.
truth comes out. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, right? But that feels familiar to me. I mean, maybe
Okay.
they're calling me because I do want to make sure that we talk about who has had experiences with you. I know Kendara wants to share as well, because like in the session, I went because I was having stomach issues. That was why I called Shane, and that was very little what we covered, because there was a whole bunch of other stuff, which was of course playing into my stomach issues. But it's not like you go and Shane goes, okay, well you got to quit eating this and take your
Oh, good
vitamins.
points. Good point.
It's more like that snapshot that focus on the whole being and saying, do you connect with this? Is this something that you're resonating with? To me, the best readings I've ever had with anyone, or the best sessions I've ever had with anyone, is when they're constantly checking back in, because it only makes sense that you are using my intuition, that you are using my guides, and that your guides and my guides are working together. So I don't know if that's what they want me to say or not, and that's why they were
We
calling
kept
on
talking
me.
about your name, so.
But that's where I resonate with that. Is I don't remember for sure if we did that. Let me see if I remember. Like I'm going back through my thing. I have my notes somewhere, but it feels like a billion years ago.
Yeah, I know. So I'll pick up on that. So back to Ethan to finish up that question. When someone comes in, oftentimes it's that belief systems that we're looking at, and those belief systems resonate in the energetic field of the body. So your thoughts and what you're thinking about, what you're creating about, that physical pathology in the body, whether it be a stomach issue, whether it be cancer, whether it be depression, it didn't start in your body. It started in your energetic field. And it started through a thought form that you started to materialize through your system, either it be genetic or whatever it might be. So as that's migrated through the body, it's ended up in the physical tissues. So one distinction, or one way that if you've worked with other medical mediums, I know there's others out there, I want to stress that we're all unique in how we do our work, much like massage therapists. Like I am not like any other massage therapist. I used to always want to be the best. Well, there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as the best. It really just is if you resonate with that individual. And what I've learned and what I've surrendered to is that when people show up for whatever work they're showing up for in my office, they're meant to see me at that moment. I trust and know and surrender that idea. I don't question it anymore. And this is where I just kind of pinch myself every day. I'm like, what's going on? It's crazy. But so backing up to the idea for you, Ethan, is the heart and then the belief systems, whatever's going on with shutting that down, we look at that. We look at what's going on. And more times than not, again, that safety issue might be something going on, or might be whatever it might be, but we look at that belief and we clear it out of the body. And once that's cleared, again, it pulls it out of the energetic body. So now it's lighter. So a lot of times clients will report that they feel a lot lighter. They're oftentimes tired, very tired after a session. It's like you just got a full body massage. You're like, you kind of want to crash out. So they feel tired, they're exhausted, but they literally had a healing where those emotions or that field is now cleared and it's vibrating at a higher frequency. And then when we clear out a belief that's in that second, third, or fourth levels, it does not return. It doesn't come back. And when I want to stress that, because you're like, well, what does that mean? So if we clear a genetic, like I am safe or whatever it might be, out of that second, third, or fourth level, that genetic history or soul level, it does not return. Where it may return is that first level, that subconscious level. And you might be asking, well, why is that? Well, think about this. Your conscious mind, if you go out and you're like, okay, I'm safe now, woohoo! And you go celebrate and you're having lots of fun, but then you have an experience that reminds you that you're not safe. And you go, oh, I'm not safe. And then you buy into that idea consciously in that first level, it may return there. So I always stress that once you've had a session and we've cleared some belief work out of there, it's really important to remain aware of your beliefs so that you don't reprogram yourself, your consciousness. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
Ethan, I went on a whole tangent there, but does that help understand more about the heart?
Yes. Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate the question. And again, you can kind of tell my teacher in me, right? Like I talk about anything forever. I didn't realize I talk so much.
All right, you already have people who are saying they've scheduled an appointment with you while you were talking. So,
Oh,
all
thank
right,
you.
I do want to get to Monica because she had a question a little bit forward. And can you put your two questions together, Monica, and then we'll get to you, Cindy. We're getting close to the end of time.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I have a question. Do you help with things such as bipolar disorder and addictions, etc.? And how many sessions does that usually entail? Or I don't know exactly how it works, but
Okay. Yes. So to answer your question, bipolar disease or what was the other one you mentioned?
addictions,
Addiction. I've seen a lot of addictions.
is that part of the belief cleansing?
There, yes, there is definitely some beliefs around that. Let me see. Hold on, let me see what they're talking about. Okay. Yeah, so I'm looking more at the bipolar aspect. I have a couple of clients, so one's coming to mind. Okay, so I've worked with one has tendency to be more bipolar. That's what I'm thinking of. But putting her aside, what they're talking about is yes. But I want to stress, okay, let me put it to you this way. Another aspect of the work that may not necessarily be tied to, well, it's tied to a belief, but it's tied to a person wanting to be in their body. Okay, does that make sense? So not
Yes.
that all bipolar diseases are people that don't want to be in a body. There could be some mental pieces that are going on with that. And again, so this is me thinking out loud here. If I were in a session with someone who has bipolar, I would take their diagnosis and I would look at what the doctors are doing and their medication and kind of go, okay, what's going on here? What's this being treated for? And then we start looking at it and I say, okay, cool. That's my preparation prior to a session to have an idea of what medically is going on. And then when I get in a session, thanks, they're laughing at me. Okay, so sources telling me that they may go to the brain. So they might look at the chemistry in the brain and they might have to rebalance that. They might have to go back in and look at the nervous system. So what I want to stress is who created the pathology or who created the pathology? Do you believe that you can be healed? And I'm thinking that's geared toward you specifically for some reason. So just kind of want you to sit with that for a second. But in general, when someone comes in, I'll ask them, I say, do you believe you can get better? If they don't believe they can get better, guess where we start? We start with the idea that they can get better. Because if you're operating with the idea that no matter what happens, you're not going to get better, then all I do is a band-aid. I'm just a band-aid on, like, I'm like a massage therapist, I'm like this, I'm like medication, I'm like drugs, I'm just another band-aid. So the root of the cause, or what might be where we need to start, would be is, well, hey, let's look at the belief about you getting better. Do you want to get better? Do you believe you can get better? Because some folks, what I've learned is that they literally have an identity to, let's say it's bipolar. They have an identity to that bipolar disease. Now it makes sense. You're like, why would I want that to happen? There's no way, not at all. That's no way would I want that to happen. But then if they sit with it and they go, well, all of my friends I have because of this disease. If I don't have the disease, I lose my friends. Do you see? So
Yeah, it's like an identity. It's a whole identity.
So sometimes it can be very much an identity. So in those cases, it depends on where source takes me and what they're looking at. It could be brain chemistry. It could be some of the chemicals in the brain and how they're not being produced. Now, this is where I'm like, I have no idea what chemicals they're talking about. They're saying chemicals. Okay, cool. Well, I may then need to go, if I need to, and that's more of my curiosity, I might go look in and say, okay, bipolar. What are some of the neurotransmitters? What are some of the, what are some of the conditions that lead to in the brain? Again, that's for me to know. So that when I go into session and they start looking at the brain, I'm like, okay, they're on the frontal lobe, they're on the parietal lobe. I know what those are. Okay, so what's the chemistry like? I'll tell source. I'm like, okay, source, you're blowing by the brain here. Let's go back up. Show me the brain. Show me where this is not happening, or show me where this chemical process is occurring. Okay, boom. They're showing me. Okay, got it. Now I'll watch it be healed. And so I may need to be more of a director in that approach, as far as like, hey, don't blow by that. Come back. All right. So that's the relationship between source and I that has developed over time. So in communication, so it might be chemistry, or it just might be the fact that we start with the belief about not wanting to get better, and then we look at that. So those are two ways they want me. They're literally telling me how to answer that question. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, bless your heart. That's a great question.
Okay, before we go to Cindy's question, I do want Kendara to tap in here just for a second and let you guys know about her experience, because I think it does help when you hear someone who's had an experience. So Kendara, could you do that?
Yeah, I met Shane about 3 years ago and I didn't like him at all.
I
said
know,
a fair,
right?
and he
You
came
told
up
me
and he
no.
said, no, I didn't. I don't know why, but
did.
he wanted to come and talk to my group, and I went, well, I'm completely booked up. But
You
he
said that
said,
3
let me
times.
give you a session. And I was having tooth trouble. And he went into my mouth and they showed him the teeth, and it was incredible. And he absolutely fixed it. And then I went to him again, and he worked on some conditions based on DNA, which I did not have, but because he cleared them up, I would not get them. He's just simply the best. So thank you.
I remember that conversation, Kendra. I remember her telling me, I remember sitting in my head going, that makes no sense. Why'd she tell me no?
All right, guys. Well, thank you, Kendara, for sharing about that. I do want to say a couple things, and then we'll wrap up with 2 quick questions. One, Shane, could you put in the chat if there was any sort of any place that someone who wanted to pursue being a medical intuitive can learn? Can they do that with you, or is there somebody you could recommend? Cindy wanted to know that. And then Tom wants to know how often you get mistaken for Randy Gradishar. I don't know who that is. And then other than that, we have a whole bunch of people asking, basically, can you handle multiple sclerosis? Can you handle ascension issues? And tell me if I'm wrong here, but pretty much you can handle anything. When they come to you, you're going to pull in their guides and work with your guides to help deal with whatever the core issue is. Is that correct?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Who created us? Not to get like religious, etc., but like who's the all creator, right?
That's a
Spark of
loaded
light,
question in this group.
I know, not to get too crazy on you, but in my world, the answer is the universe, the almighty, whatever you want to call it, I care less, the divine spark, whatever, the enlightened one. We are created in every aspect of who we are as whole, healthy, and complete at all times. So any condition that's less than that can be certainly healed. I don't know specifically unless I'm working with them. I will say, to take this to another level, oftentimes folks that have incarnated from other universes or other planetary systems are having a really hard time adjusting on Earth and living on Earth. It might be their first time coming here, etc., or they might be fairly new as a human on this planet or this dimension. So it's not uncommon. I say I don't see that a lot, but sometimes it'll pop through where it's like, man, you just want to go like home. You don't want to be here. So the ascension issues, it really depends on what kind of comes in. But that is, I would say, there isn't anything physically in the body that can show up that can't be healed.
Awesome. Thank you. And then as far as if somebody wanted to pursue this and maybe learning a little bit more, where could they do that?
Right. So the funniest thing is I kind of alluded to my teacher. I found out recently that she had a heart attack back in April and is not doing well and has retired again after our classes. I don't know anybody in the Denver metro area that teaches it. However, I am able to teach both the medical intuitive class and the DNA practitioner training. And I'm hesitant when I say that because they've told me many times I got to get it together. I got it together, but it's more like when folks come in, I would say it's more like, particularly with COVID, but it may be more like it'll be a little bit delayed, but it won't be a big class. It might be here in my own office. But yes, we could do a class for folks that are interested that would like to learn.
Okay, so if you're interested in that,
that does it. You know, that does it, at least the way that I do it. I mean, I don't know anybody locally that does it.
Right. So if you're interested in that, please send an email. What's your email, Shane?
Shane@innerlightshines.com.
Okay. All right. And that is a great way to reach out to him to get the extra $5 off for your first session, or you can call him, or you can reach out through the website, which we've put in over there quite a few times. Thank you guys so much for being here. Over in the chat, there's been a few things. We put Kendara's meetup because that got mentioned today. And Kendara has brought us so many amazing teachers. So thank you, Kendara, for that. And I'm so grateful for the connection with Shane. And so I can't thank you enough. And then Shane, I'm so grateful for you today. Absolutely. So please, you guys, let's support Shane, book a session with him. Let us know how it goes. I love after all these deep dives because our Zen Zooms for the next week are always like, I'm seeing Shane. I saw Shane. It's so exciting. And so that's so much fun for us. There's quite a few practitioners here in the room with us. And if you want to share what you do and put that over in the chat, of course, we always love to promote you all in Awkwardly Zen. And then also, if you guys saw, I put over in the chat, we have a t-shirt run going where you can support Awkwardly Zen by purchasing a shirt. We have 3 different styles going right now. Or if you want to just give a love offering to help us cover some of our costs and the costs of our upcoming community, online community and website that the lovely Monica is busting her tail on with help from a lot of the people in the group. Thank you. Please do that. She's laughing because bless her heart, she's been about ready to pull out her hair, but we love her. And so thank you guys so much. I can't tell you how much of a blessing it is to be a part of this group and get to hang out with you guys all the time. Please watch. If you are not a member of Awkwardly Zen, just pick one of them on Meetup. We have 6 different locations at this point. So just look up Awkwardly Zen and make sure you're watching because we have a lot of really fun stuff that it's going to be getting scheduled here shortly for February. So watch that. And yeah, anything else you want to tell us, Shane, before we say goodnight?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you guys. And I'll just share with the whole group, your journey as an intuitive or a spiritual being is a journey. And developing your intuition, I think, is a key part of that. So no matter where you are in that journey, I really encourage you to continue to connect and play and practice with it.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that, Shane. And I will wrap up with just during my session with Shane, my grandmother came through. So when he says that it's all tied together, that absolutely is the case. And the cool thing is, and I haven't even told Shane this yet, is that my grandmother came through with Shane, and then she just came through again with Lori Hewitt recently. And so it's been fun how that is all tying together and how that connects. So I can't recommend Shane enough. I've had so much fun getting to know him and seeing how this goes. Shane, I hope you'll come back and work with us again soon. And thank you all. There's been lots of different recommendations over in the chat. I've stopped paying attention, so you're all on your own. Have a fabulous night, and thank you guys so much for being a part of Awkwardly Zen.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.